Welcome back. We are in. It is a day of bumbled words. We're in Matthew 6, and we are in part 5. So we're studying now 25 through 35. The root of worry is fear. Now, planning is not the same as worry. Planning is being responsible. You're using information to create solutions rather than feeling overwhelmed by those uncertainties and fears. So it's a totally different thing. Worry versus planning is not the same. And we actually see this in the story of Pharaoh and Joseph. They knew that 7 years were going to be bad, and they could have let that overwhelm them and create fear and stop them from being able to prepare for the future. But instead, they used that information to then begin to plan. So they were not pressed down with worry. They had a plan. They acted on it. And that is how they were able to take care of the nation beyond. So now we look at, because God says, Jesus is saying, do not worry. But how many of us also read this and go, okay, that sounds great. And I've heard people tell me, don't worry. But how on earth do you not worry? Well, the opposite of worry and anxiety is peace and gratitude. These two cannot exist in the brain at the same time. In fact, there's even a scientific study to show that this is true, that you cannot, they absolutely cannot. If you are worrying and you start having gratitude and thanksgiving in your heart and you start speaking that, the worry disappears. It cannot stay in the brain at the same time. And we read in Philippians 4 6 to 7, do not be, let's see, hold on, let me get there. Philippians 4 6 to 7, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So, first of all, one, don't be anxious for anything. Okay, well, how do you do that? Well, present in everything is the opposite, countering it. In everything with all your prayer, your request, do it with thanksgiving. So don't just come with prayer and worry, you come with thanksgiving. And everything that you're saying and you're praying and you're asking for God's help in, you're doing it with a heart of thanksgiving and gratitude. That's how you present your request to God. Lord, I thank you that I can come to you with this. This is the problem that I have, and I know that you have the solution, and I praise you that I can come to you for these solutions. So when you do that, then it says, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. That means worry cannot come in. It cannot enter because it is guarded now by the peace of God, because now peace prevails. Now he continues on. If you want to push away worry and anxiety and fear and continue to have this mind of peace, then here is what you do. Whatever is true, this is what you think on. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think on these things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Now, the way I think about this is actually, my husband's mom taught this years ago, and both of us have used this as an illustration all the time. But it's called the Philippians frisk. So, what you do is you first of all think of a frisk. If a police officer pulls somebody over and they are suspecting it of having some sort of contraband, of this person of having contraband, they are going to frisk that person. Now, if there's one item of contraband on that person, what happens? Well, they immediately are taken to prison. So the Bible tells us to make every thought captive and submit it to Christ. Okay, so we're taking these thoughts and we're going, I suspect that there might be something here. You frisk it. And if there's anything that is not of God that you are not to think on, then you send it to your jail, your mind jail, and say, I'm not going to think on these things because this is not of God. So how do you know if it is contraband? Well, you look at Philippians. And what I do is actually write down all of those true, pure, lovely, right, admirable, all these things that you are needing to think on. Because it says what to think on, not the opposite of it. It's these are not the things to think on. It says this is what you should think on. So you write those down and you go, okay, the first thought that comes into mind, if it fails any of these qualities, then you cannot continue to think on it. And if you do this more and more and more, it'll become second nature. At first, it's a little hard because you're having to think through all of these and you got to commit that verse to memory. But the more that you do, the more it becomes second nature, and the more you are transformed by the renewing of your mind. And as it says, when you put all this into practice, the God of peace will be with you. Your mind will be at peace, and you will be able to think clearly and receive the creative solutions that God has for the problems that you are dealing with, because God is giving us solutions through a mind of His peace. So, in our American ways of thinking, somehow we seem to have glorified worry, and we feel irresponsible when we aren't worried about something, about the future, or discussing it in gloomy terms, that gloomy forecast in our lives. But when we live at peace over the difficult circumstances, the enemy causes us to believe this lie that we are apathetic, that we could care less. But in reality, when we allow God's peace to guard our hearts and our minds, we clear away those clouds of anxiety that block His solutions. So, the most responsible thing we can do in those hard times is to be grateful, to come with thanksgiving in our prayers, and to find that peace in God. I also think of the story of Corrie ten Boom, one of the stories that she tells, that when they were in the concentration camps, they were enduring a lot of fleas, and it was awful because they're, of course, fighting the people. And she was struggling with it, obviously. But she began to give praise and thanksgiving for the fleas. Whether she knew really why she was giving thanksgiving for them or if it was the Lord's prompting, I don't remember that part of the story. But whatever the case is, she started to thank God for the fleas. And what was taking place is those fleas were actually keeping the soldiers, the guards, from coming in and tormenting and torturing them even more. So sometimes the most irritating things, the things that we find the most annoying or troublesome or we think are a pain, might be the thing that's protecting. So we come to God with our thanksgiving and we say, Lord, this is the problem. I need your solution. And I'm going to come with it out of a place of thanksgiving and gratitude for these problems because I know you're going to teach me something through it. So that's where we leave off in chapter 6. I hope you have been really challenged because this last part of chapter 6 can be really transformational when you start to change your way of thinking and you apply this Philippians frisk and really commit it to your life. So be encouraged, and I look forward to talking about chapter 7 next week.